From politics to producing, Congressman Eric Swalwell is teaming up with Sean Penn for a new film. It's called Words of War, and it tells the real-life story of Russian journalist Anna Politkovskaya and her often fearless reporting on human rights abuses and the war in Chechnya.
The paper I work for believes that people deserve the truth, not lies. They're choking on lies.
Oh, you think the truth will go down easier?
Would you talk to me?
I took the word of a Russian reporter once. I swore never again.
Eric Swalwell joins me now to talk about this project along with all the action going on in Washington. Good to see you, Congressman. So you're the executive producer on this movie. How did you become involved in it?
Sean Penn has been a longtime friend, fellow Californian, and someone who cares deeply about what's happening in Ukraine, and has just always struck me as somebody who's not just like talking the talk, but walks the walk, will go on the ground, get his hands dirty, embed in a crisis and bring help to a crisis. And so somebody had sent me an early cut of this film, and I just happened to made a dinner date with Sean, and I asked Sean if he'd want to watch the film with me. So we watched an early cut in his living room. He asked me if the writing and producing team would be open to some of his notes. And I said, I think they'd probably take notes from Sean Penn. And so sent the notes back, and then pretty quickly, Sean and I found ourselves on the team.
Were you familiar with this story before your involvement in the film?
I received, like many of my colleagues, a PhD in Russian studies after the 2016 election, really digging in to understand, how Putin and his regime, with an iron fist have ruled Russia. And so yes, I was aware of Anna and her journey, but also that sadly she was not the first journalist that would be killed under Putin. Many journalists will have suffered the same fate. And so to me, this story and my interest in it it's obviously like a heroic journey that she goes on, and she's fearless as she does it, but it's also a cautionary tale for us because there were not enough Annas at her time. And so he was able to not just defeat her, but essentially defeat a free press in Russia.
One thing that lawmakers and journalists here, we in the media have in common is that a lot of the public aren't that big a fan of ours. A Gallup poll last October found the majority of those surveyed have no trust at all in the media or not much trust. Another Gallup poll last month found only 28% approve of the way Congress is handling its job. As a lawmaker who's now producing this film, how do we change those trend lines?
Just be your true self, give your zero draft. I tell my colleagues, we don't have to be so polished and scripted. People want to know what's in here. They don't need a Harvard Law School moot court answer, to everything. And they don't want to think that you're anything but authentic. And I think authenticity is probably the value that people are looking for the most in the news and in politics. I care a lot about a free press. My first job at 10 years old was as a newspaper delivery boy, and I did that for a company where my mom had worked when she was a kid, and my grandfather was a local editor of our newspaper in the Bay Area. And even in elementary school, I started a school newspaper, and I would write for my school newspaper all the way through high school and college. So even as somebody who now is critically covered by the press, I understand it's their role to do that, and I want to make sure that I do my own small part to make sure that the press is trusted and the press is independent.
You've also introduced legislation aimed at protecting journalists. What do you want audiences to take away from this film?
I want them to look at Anna and see that her doggedness and her fearlessness is what you want in a journalist, but she was doing it alone, and that's why she was able to be defeated and killed. So we need more Annas. And look, this woman, as she critically covered Putin, as he was lying to the Russian people about what he was doing in Chechnya, she was warned by her family that something could happen to her. She persisted. She was warned by her editor, who's played by Kieran Hines, that something could happen to her, and she persisted. She was poisoned and survived a poisoning, and yet she persisted. And then ultimately, because she was one of the few in the country that were willing to do that, she was an easy target. And so to me, the lesson is don't shrink, don't hide under the bed, in our country is this president seeks to cut one-off deals with universities or law firms or even the media. Realize that you're stronger if you link arms and band together than if you are to be singled out.
I want to talk to you about some of today's headlines. Your colleague in Congress, Congresswoman LaMonica McIver, a Democrat out of New Jersey, facing an assault charge stemming from that skirmish outside an ICE detention center. What do you think of the charges facing McIver?
They're completely politically motivated. What is not discussed enough is that, one, McIver has a right to go unannounced to any federal facility. That's the law as a member of Congress. Two, as she was being denied that right and she saw the mayor of Newark, who was with her, being arrested, she actually was let in. So after this skirmish between the police and the protesters, whatever they are alleging she did, if she was so bad and so violent, why did they still let her in and give her a full tour? So to me, this is Donald Trump and the Department of Justice trying to bully a member of Congress and to seek to deter members of Congress from doing our job. Just as I pointed out, with what happened in Russia and what's happening here in the United States, we can't just let her be on her own. It has to be clear that if you mess with one member of the family, and we're a family, the Democratic caucus, you're messing with all of us. And so we all have her back. We're all contributing to her to make sure that she has help in her legal defense fund. But more than that, we're showing her that, spiritually and, just as fellowship, we're there with her, and that we're not going to let her be on her own as she defends herself against these charges.
Lots of talk this week about former President Biden's health, especially with the release of a book by Jake Tapper, Alex Thompson, alleging that close aides to Biden helped perhaps conceal his cognitive decline while he was in office. Do you think that Biden's aides offered too much protection to the then president and ended up concealing his health?
Well, I wish him well in his health. And I've family members who are in cancer battles, and it's scary, and it will consume most of your time. You'll be thinking about that loved one. So I'm thinking of them. I didn't work in the White House. I didn't engage directly, with the White House. But what I can tell you is that in the 2 years that he was president and that we were in the majority in the House and the Senate, some of the most consequential legislation as it relates to jobs and infrastructure, the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS Act, what we did for veterans who are exposed to burn pits, and the Safer Communities Act to bring more resources to reduce gun violence. I mean, if you look at his record, it was a consequential presidency when he was in office and had the majority in Congress.
What grade would you give to Democratic leadership on their efforts to push back against President Trump?
Yeah, well, we have room for improvement, but we're seeing, I would say, all of our colleagues are stepping up and recognizing that this is not to the voters an approach of, are you far left or center left? It's more, are you bringing old tactics, to this challenge, or are you bringing new tactics? Old tactics would be sending, an 8-page strongly worded letter to the administration. New tactics would be using everything we have inside the House procedurally to stop Donald Trump, and then going outside, to the No Kings rally on June 14th, to the town halls that we're doing. I'm going to Republican districts and doing town halls in their districts where they won't have a town hall. I've been to Anna Paulina Luna's district. I've been to Kevin Kiley's district. I'm going to Southern California to a district next month. So, are you willing to recognize this is not a 20th century challenge? This is an existential threat to democracy, and it's either revealing who should lead or who should leave.
Is that like a solid B, or are we talking some B plus?
I'm not a teacher. As I said, I've put my helmet on. I'm back out on the field, and I think people will judge me as doing everything I can right now to make sure that we get through and have the muscle and the vision, to survive this greatest threat to democracy in my lifetime.
I want to end with one final question, a much hairier and much lighter question for you. Democrats have been making headlines lately for growing facial hair, growing beards, and they're using a lot more colorful language, especially among the 2028 hopefuls. You seem to be ahead of the game in the beard bandwagon. You grew yours during the beginning of COVID, I remember. But I have noticed online you are using a lot more censored words, some F-bombs here and there. Is this part of a strategic move by Democrats, or what's the deal here?
That's how I talk, and that's why I've told my colleagues, give us your zero draft. Don't be so polished. The country has elected as president a felon, somebody who was convicted of 34 felonies. Like, you can probably just be yourself, and if you make a mistake, that's okay. People would rather see the real you than what you think is like the projection of a politician. Like that, that's not going to fly anymore.
Words of War is now playing nationwide. Congressman Eric Swalwell, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.